Welcome to Wellness Wednesday. I'm Angel Falk, the Fitness Angel, and I'm so excited today. We are going to talk about gut health. And if anybody's read anything about gut health, you know it is very important to have good gut health because that affects every part of your health, even mental health, which is so important. So I'm excited. Dr. Doug Odom will be teaching us today and talking to us. And he always says he went to school to be a coach and took a wrong turn and went to medical school. So he's a retired OBGYN, also was a medical director for an anti-aging clinic, and just has numerous awards and kudos. And he also has been with the Juice Plus company, which is how I met him. And most of us met him on here 25 years ago. And I just love that he has so much knowledge and wisdom. And I think, Dr. Odom, you've been teaching me and my friends about gut health for 5-6 years now. And I learn something new every time because I know there's always something new on the horizon because it is somewhat new. So I'm excited for you to share with us what gut health is, how we can improve our own gut health. And I know this will only be really getting on the surface because it really affects our immune system, which is a whole another subject, but we want to know how it affects our immune system and our brain, basically everything, as much as we can get in the next 30 minutes. So I'll just thank you for being here.
My pleasure, and thank you for that introduction. Thank you, ladies, for being on and taking your time. And I am a teacher. Physician means teacher, not healer. So I'm going to use the Socratic method, as I love to do, and that's I'll ask questions and teach you that way. So with that, I will say that the immune system is definitely wrapped into what's going on in the gut, as well, especially what's going on in the brain, the neurons and how they're affected, and how the immune system has has come more to light in the last several decades, and especially since this pandemic that we're hopefully powering through, and that's going to be in the rearview mirror. So, but when I went to medical school, we were taught about immunity, and it was extremely convoluted and complicated. And it has our perspective of it has changed immensely, and especially since we've been devoting a lot of the scientific community has been devoting a lot of attention and scientific papers to what's going on in the intestinal tract or the digestive system, better known as the gut. We'll call it the gut today. So, but can you think back 100 years ago, 1922, right after World War I? Can you name the leading causes of death in this country? Well, I didn't expect you to. I'll help you. They were, most of the leading causes were infections. And here were some of the ones that were quite notable back in those days. One is pneumonia. We still have that today. That's an infection in your lungs or your pulmonary tissue. Another one is dysentery, which is bacteria in your intestinal tract. Another is tuberculosis, another bacteria. And but those were the leading causes of why people died 100 years ago. Today, the reasons people die are associated with another part of our immune system, but it's not the infection that's killing us. It's a sidebar of inflammation that is associated with all of these non-communicable diseases that are killing us today. I like to say diseases of affluence, because we can afford to do the things and live the lifestyle that we desire, and especially in this country. So 14 of the 15 leading causes of death today are have a common denominator of chronic inflammation. So where does most of that inflammation come from? It comes from inside our intestinal tract. But let me back up and point more to this concept of infections killing us. We had a war in this country. Some people called it the war between the states. Some people called it the blue and gray war, the North and the South. And more people died in that war from infections than died from bullets or gunpowder. So it's just a shame on our history that infections, when I was a kid, I was born in the 1940s. I was a World War II baby. And something happened in the 1940s. It's called the era of antibiotics, or the decade of antibiotics. How many of you have heard of penicillin? Well, that's when antibiotics became quite well known. And the man that discovered penicillin did it by accident. He was growing staphylococcus on a petri dish, and he was gone for a weekend away, and he came back and he noticed a mole on the petri dish, but around the mole, the bacteria were not thriving and were not replicating. So that's how we accidentally, or how he accidentally discovered penicillin. But since I was born, there have been hundreds of synthetic antibiotics, and we'll have to say that medicine has overused antibiotics. And I was part of that system for a while, but it became quite obvious to me that we couldn't continue to just use a shotgun approach if somebody had a sniffle or a fever, and especially a child. But back in the day, doctors were just covering with antibiotics and saying, just in case it happens to be something that might be deadly, let's see if we can't knock it out early. But in the overuse of these antibiotics, these bacteria are just like viruses. They're extremely intelligent, more so than we give them credit, and they were able to mutate and develop drug resistance. So how many of you have ever heard of C. diff? Clostridium difficile. It's a bacteria today in modern medicine that is resistant to every single antibiotic. And it's because of this overuse theory and the development of these mutant bacteria. So today it's a killer in third world countries if people happen to get C. diff infections. And I'll come back to that. But how many people do you know that have died in your lifetime of a primary infection? The answer for most of it is we don't know anybody. It could be that somebody had a bad accident, had a surgery, and developed a post-operative infection that was rampant and wild, and they succumbed to the infection. But generally, that is not the problem. It's not what infections do to us today, but rather it's another part of the immune system that is trying to protect us. And it's our immune system. And its primary sole purpose is to keep us healthy and to attack any invader, foreign or otherwise, that is that has gained entrance somehow into the human body, whether it's through the foods that we eat, the air that we breathe in, or just through our skin. And I don't know if I'm going to get to the inflammatory process today, Angel, adequately enough to talk about immune health. So maybe we'll just make that a part 2, and I'll do that at another time. We'll stick with gut health today. Is that good? Okay. So delivering babies for a living put me in close contact with a lot of babies, like thousands of them. And babies are inoculated with bacteria that's in their mother's intestinal tract, but also inside her vaginal canal when they're born. They're in the birth canal, and those bacteria are the ones that primarily inoculate the baby's intestinal tract, and that's called the enteric microbiome. And we're learning so much about the bacteria that we all are hosting, and there's not a living organism on the planet that doesn't have bacteria in it. Whether you think of your pet fish, or your dog or cat, or a grasshopper, or a snail, they all have bacteria. If they're producing energy and are eating foods of whatever sort, they have bacteria. And those bacteria are living in an ecosystem within our digestive system, within our digestive tract or our gut, in a symbiotic relationship. They like it where it's warm and moist and dark, and they are multiplying and dividing at a record clip, and that's what these bacteria do. And we get to choose how we feed these bacteria. And these bacteria that we're hosting fall into one of 2 categories. The first category is known as Bacteroidetes. And these are your beneficial, some people call them good or healthy bacteria, but we call them beneficial bacteria. And the other group is called Firmicutes. And Firmicutes are typically associated with pathology and inflammation. And they're found in more than adequate numbers in people that are overweight or obese. These Firmicutes bacteria have mutated to the point that they have developed an ability to accept more calories, or to absorb more calories from food than the Bacteroidetes. So the more Firmicutes that we have, the more likely you are to be overweight. So when I was in school, again in the medical school in the 60s, we thought it was just a simple math equation, calories in and calories out. And I know that a lot of people think that they can exercise and burn enough calories to actually lose weight. And if you're an extreme athlete, or if you're like Angel and you're teaching 8 or 10 classes a day and you're burning all of those calories, you might be able to lose weight that way. But we're finding that if you don't change this bacterial balance that are typically in the United States favoring the Firmicutes, you will be struggling to lose even a few pounds. So that's the good news and the bad news. The good news is you don't have to have predominantly Firmicutes in your intestinal tract. You get to choose every day which bacterial group that you're going to be feeding. The Bacteroidetes love and thrive on fiber, and they break it down because we don't really have the innate ability to do that. So we're dependent on these bacteria to help us break the foods down that we eat that have that are plant food and that have cellulose as their matrix or fiber. But these beneficial bacteria we're finding are also making neurotransmitters besides helping us break down food. They're part of the process that allows us to make many different vitamins and other they're coenzymes for a lot of other enzymatic activities that are found in different cascade systems in the human body. So we want as many of these bacteroidetes as we can. And so why aren't we eating more plant food? That's where I was trying to get to in a hurry, Angel. And why are we eating so many of these foods that are feeding these Firmicutes bacteria that are just oozing inflammation and are associated with obesity and being overweight? And
Can I interrupt you real quick?
Sure.
I know I've heard it a million times, and maybe some of you have too, but some people may not have heard. You said, why are we not eating plant foods? So are you saying that plant foods are what feeds the healthy gut bacteria?
That is correct. Correcto mundo. Yes.
Okay,
Exactly.
good. And the bad things that feed the unhealthy gut bacteria are
Especially ultra processed foods, foods that have high sugar content or artificial sugars. Sugar in itself is extremely inflammatory, and you'll see in part 2 that it also suppresses the immune system. So why are we not eating for health? What is wrong with us? So how many of y'all have ever heard of the canary in the coal mine? None of you? Okay. Years ago, miners would take canaries down into the mines with them, down through the different layers of the earth, and it's because the canary, canary would be in a bird cage, and if the canary is happy and singing and flying around the cage, well, then the miners know that there's minimal risk to them as far as carbon monoxide or methane gas that builds up in these mines. So if they notice that the canary is not singing, or it's not active, or is actually dead, well, then they blow a whistle and they evacuate all the miners. So it's an early warning system, and we should be smart enough and intelligent enough as animals on this planet to heed the warning signals. And speaking of the brain connection to the gut, the Alzheimer's Association says that 1 out of 3 elderly today will die from some type of dementia. And one of the noted medical insurers recently, Blue Cross Blue Shield, had a paper that said that early onset dementia in 30 to 49-year-olds, that's early onset, increased by over 400% between 2013 and 2017. Another early warning sign, a canary in the coal mine. So unless you want to have cognitive dysfunction, memory issues, we should heed the warning signals, and we should be feeding the bacteria that's going to protect us, these beneficial bacteria. And you don't have to wipe out all of the non-beneficial, but it's a balance. It's a balance between the Firmicutes and the Bacteroidetes. So it's an F to B ratio. And they've looked at the colonic contents or the stool contents of third world countries. And across the board, virtually 100% of these hunter-gatherers that are third world, that don't have grocery stores, fast food options, and eat from the soil, they don't have autoimmune diseases. They're not obese, they're not overweight, and they usually die from accidents or maybe infections, but rarely from the diseases that kill us in this country. And it's as simple as looking at what bacteria we're choosing to feed every day, that literally determine what's going on in your gut, that ultimately influences every organ system in the body. Some of you may have heard of a doctor named Alessio Fasano, who in 1997 described the condition that we know today as leaky gut. And leaky gut is where we have more of these Firmicutes, these non-beneficial bacteria, than we have beneficial. And he identified a substance, a protein, that's found in the bacteria of these Firmicutes, primarily Vibrio cholera. And the name of that substance is zonulin. And zonulin has been shown to increase the permeability in the gut, which is exactly what leaky gut is. And this is a protein that we, if we have a predominance of the beneficial bacteria, we have extremely low levels of this zonulin. But zonulin has also been shown not only in leaky gut, but in type 1 diabetes. So to extract from that and go even a little deeper, when you look in the intestinal tract or you look in the colons of people that have advanced Alzheimer's or dementia, and you look at the bacterial ratio, it is the F to B ratio is greater than 1, meaning that you have a predominance of the Firmicutes. And not only in that category of patient, but in children that are on the autistic spectrum, or that even children that have ADD and ADHD, when evaluating the colons and looking at this ratio of these bacteria, the ratio is greater than 1, meaning a predominance of the wrong bacteria. And if you think about it, or if you know a child that is autistic, what do these children typically want to eat, or what do they eat? They don't eat fruits and vegetables. What their diet is primarily for texture and taste, and that's chicken tenders, it's French fries, it's things that are
I've heard
feeding
it
the
called the
wrong.
white diet. I've heard it called the white diet, like bread, pasta, the
It's
white.
things that thank you, Angel. It's things that actually feed the non-beneficial or the Firmicutes bacteria. So when are we going to wake up as a country? And all of this has been well documented. Fasano's work. I love sharing my favorite book, Brainmaker.
Let me get a picture. Let me get a picture. Hold it up.
By David Perlmutter.
I'll just share this. Okay.
So the title is Brainmaker. The subtitle is The Power of Gut Microbes, just what we're talking about, to heal and protect your brain for life. So the canary in the coal mine today is me, and I don't want to be running through the neighborhoods, ringing the bell and saying the sky's falling, but we're in control. The bottom
Yeah.
line is here, we get to decide what kind of health you want, what kind of health you want for your family, especially your children. And are we going to just feed them garbage because it tastes good and we look for a short-term pleasure versus a long-term health benefit? We've got to wake up and make decisions and be consistent with it. And we really need to understand the mechanics and the physiology behind it. And my gracious, I'm just looking at the time here. It's already
I know I keep wanting to interrupt, but I'm trying not to interrupt.
already 1 o'clock. Well, I'm gonna stop there. I'll pick it up if you allow me to do this at another time, and we'll talk more about the relationship of inflammation, the foods that we're consuming, the bacteria that we're hosting, and how all this intertwines and comes together to
Yes.
describe your overall health. So it's always a pleasure. Angel, thank you for giving me the floor one more time.
I love it.
Thank all of y'all for being on here. And if I can just wrap this up in a nutshell, this is why Juice Plus made so much sense to me. I didn't know all of this when I started, but it didn't take long. And hopefully for all of you now, it won't take long for you to deepen your knowledge base about why Juice Plus is critical for adding this to the foods that you choose to eat every day, and the foods that your family chooses to eat every day.
Yes, that was wonderful. I loved it. And I know it's 1 o'clock, so if you have to go, I understand. But I was just gonna kind of just summarize some things you said and talk about how we could apply this to our life every day. So we talked about chronic inflammation. That leads to unhealthy gut. And where we get the most inflammation is in our gut, because we're always eating. We eat too much. Go ahead.
These firmicutes are actually where the primary inflammation comes from. And as we continue to eat healthy foods, fiber-rich plant foods, nutrient-dense plant foods, if I can hammer that home, it's causing a growth in the beneficial bacteria, which is crowding out the firmicutes. As they die, these bacteria literally are giving off a toxin. It's called LPS, lipopolysaccharide, that is causing this inflammation. And because the gut is leaky, rather than the food being broken down into minute small particles that are then digested normally, a lot of this is pushed into the bloodstream before it's broken down enough, but these toxins go right along. And one of the areas that is the most sensitive to these toxins are our brain. So if we're in our whatever declining years, senior years, if you consider yourself an elder, or if you're at a certain age and you can't remember where you put the keys or where you left your glasses, it may be that you need to work on your bacterial balance.
Right. That was a wake-up call, that early onset.
If on the other hand, you pull your keys out of your pocket and say, what are these for? Then you really need help.
Anybody ever been on their phone with somebody and say, I'm looking for my phone. I'm looking for my phone. Yeah, I've done that. I've done that. Yep. And your glasses on your head, like, I'm looking for my glasses. I'm looking for my glasses. Yep. Well, I love that. And the reason
Can
I'm
I ask
wondering.
that question? Can I
Yes.
ask Dr. Odom a question real quick?
Sure.
Dr. Odom, is it true that those, because of the abundance of those firmicutes in the gut is actually really signaling our body to want to eat more food? That's why we get obese too, because we're basically feeding that bad bacteria. Is that correct?
That is correct. And so there are a lot of components that lead to overeating or to being overweight or obese. And it is the bacteria that is signaling to the neurons, the brain cells, to send me more of those donuts or those what are those? I can't
Cookies,
think.
crackers,
Yeah,
chips.
yeah, those foods, but I was trying to think of one in particular. It's
Oh.
chocolate and it has anyway, whatever. Send me more of those foods, that type of food, that
Mhm.
sugary food. That's what the firmicutes, that's the signal going to the neurons that's telling your taste buds or your um, signals to what to put on your plate to eat. You know, in Mississippi, it's more sweet tea and sodas, more desserts, more candy.
Mhm.
But you're
And
right.
Maureen, I just was going to say, I've heard so many of these big companies that sell the boxes of cereal and all that, they know it's addictive. And so they put those chemicals in that food, in that cereal, and get our children addicted. And you were saying, Dr. Odom, how we can choose. Why are we not choosing? Why are we not choosing? I think a lot of it is people are so busy. They don't want to take the time to get the real food, to get the whole food, to actually cook. So much easier to get what's quick, what's cheap, what's easy from either a grocery store packaged meal or fast food. And I was guilty too. I'm not trying to put shame on anybody. I live that way. And you want to keep your kids happy. You don't want them crying. You don't want them fussing. You don't want them complaining. And that's something that I think generation after generation, it's getting more and more, give the child what he wants, you know. And we have free gummies that are fruits and veggies, free. And how many times have you heard somebody say, my kid doesn't like them? Well, who cares? If you know they need this in their body because they're not eating their spinach, their broccoli, their kale, you know, their apples, their peaches, their artichokes, all that every single day, you have a simple way. So I feel like we have to wake up, not just for ourselves, but for our children, for our grandchildren. And I know grandparents, and I won't name any because some of them might be on this call, who make sure those grandchildren get those gummies. But yeah, we have to take charge. We have to stand up. And it's just been easy because the media is feeding us all the time. Get this, get this, get this. I mean, how many times late at night do you see those McDonald's commercials? If you watch TV late at night, none of y'all do that. I know, because y'all are perfect in bed by 9 o'clock, right? But anyway, we all know when the media is bombarding us, it's a money-making machine with all those chemicals and things that just make us more unhealthy. Stay in the doctor's office, get the drugs. It's just a cycle. It's a cycle. And when you start eating healthy, and I'm like Dr. Odom, I didn't know when I started Juice Plus, it was one simple change, just getting this in my body every day. And then the community, you start learning more and you start craving more. Just like if you're eating the bad bacteria, if you eat the good stuff, you're going to start craving that over time too, the healthy. So you really are what you eat. You are what you eat. You are what you eat hosts. So if you eat from an animal, you're getting what it ate too. That's a whole nother subject. But some simple things I was thinking is fasting. If we stop eating so much, the inflammation in our gut goes down. And that's why I love fasting. And who was the first person to ever say we should fast? God, right? Maybe he's onto something. Okay, now scientists are proving there's so many benefits. And I think about the early onset to Alzheimer's and dementia and how we can, you know, I'll never say there's a one-time cure. We know that's not there, but there is science showing that if we stop eating so much and if we start eating more plant-rich fiber, phytonutrients, we can get our gut healthier. And I love that we have some simple tools with our protein powder. We have complete that is high in fiber, and it's all plants. So I love that. There's a lady on Instagram, and she goes around and she finds the unhealthy foods. She teaches you how to read labels and all that. And I can't get over what some of these people are putting in their bodies, and the protein powders out there that are high inflammatory. So I keep preaching, reduce inflammation, get your gut healthy. And this was so good. And I know you could write 10 books yourself, Dr. Odom. You've got so much rich knowledge. So I definitely want to do a part 2 of this. So we'll plan on a part 2. I'll get with you and make sure it's a good time, and we'll get that on the books. Does anybody else have another question? Nope, no more questions. All right, guys. So thank you for being on. Thank you so much, Dr. Odom, for sharing this. And I hope y'all are fired up, because we can help people by adding Juice Plus to their diet, by drinking those complete shakes. Right now I'm drinking the Perform, or eating it. I made a smoothie bowl because I made it really thick. I added a bunch of frozen spinach and berries and what else? Banana. And I put our Perform protein because I just worked out. So that's going to give me more plants and lots of good protein too. So, all right, guys. Thank y'all. Thank you. Thank you,
Thank
Vicki.
you.
Thanks for being on.
Thank you,
Thank you,
Angel.
Dr.
Thank you, Dr. Odom.
My pleasure. Thank you.
Thanks so much.